Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Well, if I wasn't born, who am I?
You're nobody. You have no identity.
Oh, what do you mean, no identity? My name's George Bailey.
There is no George Bailey. You have no papers, no cards, no driver's license, no 4F card, no insurance policy. They're not there either.
What?
Zuzu's petals. You've been given a great gift, George. A chance to see what the world would be like without you.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film. We explore its themes, its history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I am a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Roca. I'm a voiceover artist and host of numerous shows on camera and behind the mic, and an occasional actor.
Yes, you are.
I'd like to say that.
So it's Christmas time for the Cine-Files, and we are going to do my favorite Christmas movie, bar none.
Well, the show's favorite Christmas movie, because it's actually my favorite Christmas movie as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I mean, there are great Christmas movies out there.
Yes.
There's Miracle on 34th Street, and there's Christmas Story, and there's
Scrooged,
Love
Actually,
Love Actually,
Die Hard, which
Die
we've
Hard.
talked about.
By the way, Die Hard, also one of my favorite Christmas movies.
Top 5. Absolutely.
But this one, I hope all of you know that we're going to talk about Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. It's 1946. Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed. This is the top one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, this is the only Christmas movie that qualifies as one of the greatest films of all time.
Agreed.
Yeah, it is an unbelievably great movie. John, how did you first come to this film?
Well, I think I came to it like most people from my generation as a kid. It was on all the time before they sold the rights to NBC. I think you could any network could play it. So I remember watching it for the first time and loving it, and I would watch it over and over and over again. Because when I was a kid, if I loved a movie, I watched it over and over and over again. I remember watching this 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, watching it, and I would catch it on Channel 20. I'd catch it on the PBS channels. I'd catch it on the regular channels. Like I would catch all the stuff there in DC, Virginia, and it was I enjoyed it every single time I watched it. And I never owned it until last year. Because
Really?
I kind of like the joy of discovering it or scheduling time to watch it. There was something about it, and I also enjoyed the times when the many years where you could just watch it all the time during Christmas.
I had the same experience, and part of what happened is it played all the time, and the reason was that the rights had lapsed.
Yes.
And it was because it was owned by Frank Capra had formed a company, Liberty Films, and that's who made this. And then this kind of broke Liberty Films, and that was the end of Liberty Films. And then who owned the rights went into sort of a controversy, and it just became anyone could play it. And it's also why Ted Turner got to colorize the film. And so this is one, there were a few movies, late 80s, I think, where there was a few movies, this one, Casablanca, a few others that were colorized. And it is...
Rich people, man.
Yeah, it's a travesty.
Damn travesty.
Although it's funny, this morning I just went, I'm going to look at the colorized a little bit. They do a pretty good job.
Stop it.
No, I think it's impressive what they did, but what they did was wrong.
Yes.
And the reason it's wrong is because, and this is that there's this idea that happened that color film is better. If they could have done it in color, they would have. Well, this movie was made in 1946. There had been color films for 8 or 9 years.
Right.
Color film from the time of Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind until the mid-'60s was a choice.
Yeah.
You would just decide this should be color, this should be black and white. Right. After the mid-'60s, everything became color. It very rarely do black and white, and that's really sad. And so the idea that there's something wrong with this amazing movie because it's not in color is like you're basically taking the art out of the hands of the director and the cinematographer and all the people that worked on it that made it a beautiful black and white film.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe this was done because the ratings of it were down on certain networks or whatever, but they didn't think, well, it's because you can watch it all the time, anywhere you want.
Right.
And so they thought, well, we'll make it an event thing. Like they colorized, I think, The Wizard of Oz as well. They tried to colorize The Wizard of Oz.
No, that's a joke.
No, I think so.
No, The Wizard of Oz is in color.
No, but I mean the part
opening.
that's sepia tone, they tried to color that as well, I think. I think
that was a joke. I remember that too, but I think that was a joke.
All right, if you say so. But I just remember it being a trend for these movies, and they chose these classic films as if classic films need to be colorized somehow to be accepted by the modern audience, which was the stupidest things ever on the planet. And I tried watching it one time, the colorized version of this, and I just felt like throwing up the whole time because this is not how this film should be appreciated. There's a reason that fact that it should remain in black and white because it evokes another time. It evokes a different time in Americana, a different time in our world, in our country's history.
Well, and that's the intention of the artists who made it.
Yes.
They said, let's shoot this in black and white.
Yeah.
He could have shot it in color.
Sure.
Capra made other movies in color in the 40s.
Yeah.
He didn't make this one in color. So we talked about Frank Capra, gave a lot of history of him in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yes.
So if you want to know more about Frank Capra, he's one of the great filmmakers, great directors of all time, has an amazing story.
Yeah.
Go check out our Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. We're not going to repeat that here. Who I do want to talk about is Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
So Jimmy Stewart, was in Mr. Smith. We didn't give a lot of background of his character. He's a really interesting guy. So first of all, his family background, his family was in the United States before the Revolution. He has ancestors who fought in the Revolutionary War, and he comes up from a family with a tremendous military tradition. Family who fought in the Revolutionary War. He had ancestors who fought in the War of 1812, in the Civil War, in the First World War. And Jimmy Stewart, the expectation was that he was going to go into the military.
Yeah.
But his father wanted him to get an education. He went to, I think it's Princeton. His father owned a hardware store, I think, and pushed for his son to get an education. He was an excellent architect to the point where they were encouraging him to go to grad school to become an architect. But that's where he started to get the theater bug. Goes to Broadway, becomes an actor on Broadway in the early 30s, becomes a star on Broadway. His best friend and roommate, also acting on Broadway, is Henry Fonda. And they maintain a friendship throughout their lives.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Henry Fonda gets discovered first and goes to Hollywood first. Jimmy Stewart is in a big play, I don't remember the name of it, also a hit. He gets the call to go to Hollywood. Gets picked up at the train station by his buddy Henry Fonda. They again move in together, and he becomes a bit player at MGM. And this is during the height of the studio system.
Yeah.
And the way this worked was you would become a contract player, completely different from the way Hollywood works today.
Yeah.
Which is you would get hired and you would work for MGM, and you had no choice about the movies you were in.
Yeah.
And MGM would just plug you into this movie and this movie. So he was getting $350 a week, which is pretty good money,
it's good money.
in 1935 or so. And he gets plugged into one movie, a bit part here, moves up to supporting parts. No real big success until he's getting decent success in sort of supporting roles. And then Frank Capra sees him and goes, this is who I want for You Can't Take It With Me, which is his first break. It wins Oscar for Best Picture. It also has Lionel Barrymore in a completely different role from what we're going to see in It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
A fantastic. By the way, I really love You Can't Take It With You. Have you seen it?
Not yet, no.
Yeah. So I love it. It makes me happy. If I'm sad, I'm going to watch You Can't Take It With You.
Wow, okay.
I don't think it's I don't think it's at the level of Mr. Smith or Meet John Doe or It's a Wonderful Life, but it really makes me. And it has some of that same Capra philosophy.
Is it on Netflix or do you own it?
I think I own it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I bought it.
Okay.
It's not on Netflix, I don't think. Anyway, it's really good.
Okay.
And the next movie, and that's 1938. And then Capra goes in 1939. The next year, I'm going to do Mr. Smith. Originally, he was thinking about Gary Cooper for it, and then changed his mind and said, let's do Jimmy Stewart. Yeah. And this is and suddenly Jimmy Stewart is huge. So it happens really fast. Like he comes to Hollywood in 35, 36. In 38, he's in You Can't Take It With You. 39, he wins the Oscar for Mr. Smith, I think. Or maybe no, he's nominated for an Oscar. And in 40, then it's Philadelphia Story where he wins an Oscar. And then we get to World War II.
Yeah.
And in World War II, Jimmy Stewart does an amazing thing, which a bunch of famous people did at the time. He enlists in the military.
Can you imagine that happening now?
The only one I could think of that's similar now is Pat Tillman. Pat Tillman is
but
an
I mean,
NFL
could you
player.
imagine Hollywood actors signing up to go fight in a theater of war?
I can't.
It just wouldn't happen.
And it was a ton of them. It was, Gary Cooper did.
Yeah.
I think Clark Gable did. Ronald Reagan, of course, did.
Yeah.
And the directors, John Ford, Frank Capra, like all these guys. And what they wanted from Jimmy Stewart was go do USO shows, go recruit troops, go raise money. And he didn't want to do it. He had been obsessed with planes since Lindbergh flew across the ocean, and he became a pilot in the mid-30s and got his pilot's license, apparently a really good pilot, and he said, I want to be in the Air Force, or what was at the time the Army Air Corps, and finally got in, and then again, they wanted to have him on the base. They wanted to have him, they didn't want to send him to combat. He said, finally, in 1943, he pushes his way to go to combat. He trains on B-24s, so B-24 pilot, flew mission after mission after mission in North Africa and then into Europe. became the squadron commander, was promoted to lieutenant colonel,
Right.
flew missions over Berlin, received the Distinguished Service Cross twice,
Yeah.
received the Distinguished Flying Medal, I think, with bronze clusters. These are big awards.
Yeah.
Became a lieutenant colonel, was running whole squadrons, and while he was then running was a base commander. I mean, this is not bullshit military
Yeah.
service. He was a genuine military hero. He continued to fly secretly because he wanted to continue to serve in missions, even though he wasn't supposed to. So he's like Captain Kirk at this point. You know what I mean? Becomes a full colonel.
Betting women all over the place. Yeah,
I don't know about that. He's a
That's
pretty
the
pure
Kirk.
guy. Yeah,
you
I don't
can't
think
have Kirk without that.
Fair enough. And then after World War II ends, he was really nervous about getting back into acting. He's like, maybe I can't do this anymore. So he became a co-founder of Southwest Airlines.
Wow.
Because he thought maybe I'm just going to be in a pilot and be
Right.
in the airlines. He continued his military service through Vietnam, retired as in the reserves, retired as a brigadier general.
Wow.
Yeah, highest ranking actor of all time in the U.S.
Brigadier
military.
General James Stewart.
Yep.
Wow.
And he kept this completely separate from his
Yeah.
acting life. And he continued in the reserves to go do service every year. He actually he didn't fly a combat mission over Vietnam, but he
Right.
flew observation missions over Vietnam in 1966. Isn't that amazing?
Insane.
Yeah. And this is where I was like, oh, Jimmy Stewart is, in addition to being a movie hero,
Yeah.
he's an actual hero.
Yeah. And kind of a badass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this, by the way, for a guy who was too skinny to get in the military. He had to go he got rejected twice in 1941 and had to go to the MGM trainer and said, we got to put 9 pounds on me of muscle and train then came back and was actually admitted into the military.
Nice.
Yeah, amazing story. So in 1946, It's a Wonderful Life is his first movie back after the war.
Wow.
Yeah. One last thing about Jimmy Stewart is that, so his acting career comes back and he actually becomes well known as a Western actor and his association with Hitchcock in movies like Vertigo and Rope and Man Who Knew Too Much.
His Western stuff, Winchester 73, Broken Arrow, these are great things.
Man Who Shot Liberty
Valance.
Valance.
If you don't know Jimmy Stewart's Western work, even as he got older, it's great stuff.
Yeah, he's great. And what's interesting is that, so he started as a contract player at MGM, and he is actually part of breaking the studio system because in the late 50s, early 60s, he switches his agents to Lew Wasserman. And Lew Wasserman, we'll probably talk about him other times in the Cine-Files, a really important Hollywood figure. He's a super powerful agent.
Okay.
And they offer Jimmy Stewart a deal. I think it's on a John Ford movie. And they say, here, this is the money we want to pay for the movie. And Wasserman says, no. He's going to work for a percentage of the picture and a producer credit. And this is the first time this has ever happened. And that moment, and he gets the deal for a lot of money, and the movie's a big hit. And from that point forward, that's what actors start to want. And actors starting to want percentages is what begins the death of the studio system. It breaks the contract player system. Right. The old studio folks are going out, and Lew Wasserman becomes the head of Universal at a certain point.
Wow.
And that is, as we move into the 60s, the studio system is dying. Yeah. And the system that, in some ways, we still have today, where agents and actors have so much power, starts with Jimmy Stewart and Lew Wasserman.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it's an amazing story.
It is. What an interesting film to come back with, too. Now, this is the thing people forget. This is not a happy film. This is a kind of very dark film, and especially coming out of the war, and it wasn't well received in the theaters. It wasn't like it kind of flopped, and it found a second life.
It's not quite a flop, but it's not a success.
Yeah, not a success. Yeah. It kind of found a second life later on, obviously, but like the film itself, for a country coming out of the best years of our lives is another one that's very dark. So,
well, that's what it lost the Oscar to.
Right, exactly. Yeah. These things that are coming out right after the war. It's really interesting that the country does that, because you would think coming out of a war, it's more about like being happy and we survived, we killed the Nazis. Blah, blah, blah.
I think that's why it didn't do well.
Yes,
I think it took time for us to. I don't think people were willing. It's funny you think about Capra. Everyone thinks about it's sentimental and it's sweet. Yeah. It's like no, It's a Wonderful Life is hard.
Yeah.
It does not say great things about humans. It says humans have the potential for great things, but it says a lot of hard things about humans. Let's talk a little about where the story came from.
Sure.
So it's a short story writer whose name I don't have in front of me. Okay. He wrote the short story. No one would buy it. He couldn't sell it. So what he finally did was he printed his short story on Christmas cards and printed like 1,000 of them and sent them out to all his friends.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's how people for it was. I forget the name of the short story. It wasn't called It's a Wonderful Life. RKO saw it. They bought it for $10,000. They wrote, which is pretty good for this guy. Couldn't sell a short story.
So.
They had 3 screenplays written by top screenwriters. None of them worked. A few years comes by. The war ends. Capra comes back, hears about the property. He buys it from RKO for $10,000. He writes it in 2 weeks, apparently, with Goodrich and Hacker. They rewrite the script. There was no Potter in the original short story. So many of the details of the town, all that Capra-ness gets put in at this point. Originally, he's thinking maybe Gary Cooper's going to play the part. Then again, decides on Jimmy Stewart. And he wants to put Jean Arthur in against him. But Jean Arthur's doing a Broadway play. He goes to Ginger Rogers to play Mary. She's like, I don't want to do that.
Wow.
Too sweet for me. And then they go to this, again, a contract player, Donna Reed, who no one had heard of. And man, she was amazing in this film. Absolutely amazing in the film. The production is actually a pretty expensive production. They shoot on the RKO backlot, and they built on 4 acres all of Bedford Falls. That's all a movie set. Wow. They built 75 storefronts. The trees, all of that stuff is constructed. It's a fairly big production, and they shoot the movie and finish it, as Capra usually did, on time, on budget. It's a really, really smooth production.
Yeah, I went to see it a couple of years ago at the Academy. The Oscars, the Academy has a building where they show the old movies, and they had Frank Capra III there, and they had in front of us, they had the wind machines that they used and the simulation snow. And so they blew it into the audience afterwards in a Q&A after they screened the movie to show us what this was like, or before they screened the movie to show us what this was like. And they explained how extensive it was and how it was and it was really difficult to create that stuff and how it affected the actors and all this kind of jazz, because it was a lot of fake snow that they had to put in there. And I think it was like tissue paper or cotton or whatever it was.
It's a combination of things. It's like foam and gypsum, and I have it on a list somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's different. That's new for this movie.
Yeah.
Previously, when they made snow, they had crushed up cornflakes painted white.
Ah, yes.
But the problem with that is that they crunch when you walk on them.
Right.
And so you would always have to re-record dialogue. And so Capra didn't want that. And so they invented this new technique. And there is a ton of snow in that last sequence. I mean, it's a ton.
Yeah, that's right.
And tough to act with. What he did previously in the movie Lost Horizon, which is an interesting film. I don't think it's a great film, but it's an interesting film, is because they wanted to be in the snow, they shot most of it in an ice house. Oof. So it was actually, 10 degrees because he wanted to see people's breath and he wanted people to be really cold. He didn't do that for Bedford Falls. All right, let's talk about the movie.
Yes, please.
So we start with prayers.
Yes.
And then we go to heaven.
Yep.
And it's weird because it's like we're going. I mean, I don't think I had seen the beginning of the movie because it was on TV all the time. I would come in the middle. And so I remember at like 18 watching it from the beginning going, what's this going into space thing?
I love that the angels are stars.
And the angels are stars.
Yeah.
And I don't know there's any other movie like this.
And I love the blinking of the light as they're talking. It's so great.
Well, and that Clarence is this little tiny star that pulls up. And they're talking about this guy that's in trouble, George Bailey.
Yeah.
And then we go back in time and see his life. And this is, in fact, most of the movie is his life being explained to Clarence, the young angel.
Well, and this is very similar to the opening of Citizen Kane. Like we have it. This is in essence a newsreel about George Bailey's life, so that we as the audience can immediately gravitate to George Bailey without him saying a word. As Jimmy Stewart, we immediately feel for him. He saves his kid brother in the water. He's hee-haw, like all that stuff that he does. We see him as a child, and we immediately love the character. That actor who played him as a child, so great.
He's great.
Before Jimmy Stewart ever shows up, he has laid the groundwork for this character that we as an audience immediately gravitate to and love. And because people in heaven are speaking about this guy and are worried about this guy, it means a lot.
Well, and the first thing we see him do is a heroic act.
Yes.
And by the way, I'm always fascinated by watching kids in movies of the past.
Yeah.
Because we see them, they're sitting on shovels.
Yeah.
Sliding down an icy bank onto a frozen over river.
Yeah.
Or pond or something. And would any parent let their kid do this today? And not only would no parent let their kid do this today, and we have 7 to 11-year-old kids or something.
Sure.
out on their own in the woods.
Yeah.
Does any parent let their kid go
Nowadays,
out?
no.
No.
That was my whole existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a movie, those kids are actually doing this thing.
Yeah.
They're not stuntmen.
No.
You know, and it's just, I look at that and I go, oh, there's something, absolutely.
That's the filmmaker in you.
No. I don't mean I
Or the
look at
dad
the
in
kid.
you.
No, I mean it's the parent, it's the child. I don't think we're being good to our kids
Gotcha.
by protecting them like this. I
Gotcha.
think it was better when kids were out having adventures and living their lives and being trusted with responsibility. And of course, sometimes the kid's going to fall through the ice.
Right.
And then we get to George's job working for Mr. Gower, the druggist.
Right.
So one thing I should say about this movie is it worked me so much more watching it this time.
Wow.
Than it ever has before. And I've always loved the movie. And there are two new reasons. And one of them I'll get into right now is this is the first time I think I watched it as a parent.
Ah, okay.
And so watching George and Mr. Gower is the amazing, heroic, powerful, scary scene. And what's happening is Mr. Gower, who's played, by the way, by H.B. Warner, who played Jesus in Cecil B. DeMille's King of Kings, I think. Or
wow. The silent version, right?
The silent movie.
Yeah.
So, and you can imagine, like, this guy was Jesus in 1920 or something. And now, 25 years later, you see him as this old man who's just learned that his son has died.
Of the flu.
Yeah. And he's putting together a prescription for someone, and he gives it to George to deliver it. And George realizes that it's poison.
Yeah.
And he goes to his father, but his father is meeting with horrible Mr. Potter and is too busy. Uncle Billy's too busy, and he realizes, I have to deal with this himself. And he tries to tell, and Mr. Gower is upset because George was supposed to deliver the thing and hasn't delivered it, and he starts arguing with it. And Mr. Gower hits George in the ear, which he has a bad ear from saving his brother, and his ear starts bleeding. And it is brutal.
It is brutal.
It is brutal
The
to
smacks
watch.
are hard.
Did you hear what I said?
Yes, sir.
What kind of tricks you banging away? Why right into the limit and right away? Don't you know that boy's very quick?
You're hurting my sword here.
And George still doesn't quit and is crying to explain to, it's getting me teared up right now thinking about, to explain to Mr. Gower, no, you don't want to do it. You made a mistake. You're going to hurt someone.
Mr. Gower, you don't know what you're doing. You put something wrong in those capsules. I know you're unhappy. You got the telegram and you're upset. You put something bad in those capsules. It wasn't your fault, Mr. Gower. Just look and see what you did. Look at the bottle you took the powder from. It's poison, I tell you, it's poison.
And then Mr. Gower finally penetrates and he looks at it and he tastes the medicine and then he realizes the truth and he goes to hug George and George is still frightened. Please don't hit me again. Please don't hit me again.
Don't hurt my sore again. Don't hurt my sore again.
Oh, George.
Oh, Mr. Gower, I would never tell anyone. I know your feeling. I would have felt so. Hope to die, I won't.
And he hugs him, he thanks him, and
once again, these are these great moments that happen before we ever see Jimmy Stewart on screen. This kid is so good at establishing the heroic nature of George Bailey that by the time Jimmy Stewart is on screen, most of the work to connect with the audience with this particular character has been done. And everything that comes afterwards is us enjoying Jimmy Stewart, embodying this character and bringing him to life and taking us to the next levels of this character as he gets older, as he progresses through his life. But this kid does a fantastic job. And that scene is so powerful because of the way that actor, who you mentioned his name, breaks down and seeks forgiveness from a child in that moment.
A heroic child.
Heroic child. And establishes George Bailey's reputation in the town.
Well, well, I don't know that the town knows.
Well, saving his brother,
definitely.
But then I'm sure rumors or whatever gets out. Who knows? But we get this idea that he's a heroic. He's just a heroic presence in the. It's a small town, but a heroic presence in the small town.
And this goes to the essential darkness of the film.
Yes,
is that Gower at that moment is an extremely dark character. He is beating a kid in the head, and he's despondent and drunk, and yet we in the movie we don't judge him.
No.
We forgive him, and just as George doesn't judge him.
Right.
George tried to help him. Right. And then we get our introduction of Jimmy Stewart in this great freeze frame. And it's always remarkable to me because this is Jimmy Stewart. He's just come back from war as a colonel flying squadrons. The aging of George Bailey is amazing.
Yeah.
He plays a great 19, 20-year-old guy as a 30-something-year-old guy.
I want a big one. Yeah, it's such a great intro.
It's wonderful.
And he's so young looking. You're right. I liken it to what happens in Excalibur when you see, I think it's Nigel Terry is the actor, go from a young Arthur to the old Arthur, who's grizzled veteran.
Sure.
It's very, to me, very similar.
Yeah. And we go to meet Harry and his family and Dad in the bank, and George has got plans because the thing we learn over and over again is George wants to travel and George wants to build things. He wants to build bridges and skyscrapers and big stuff.
Yeah.
And that is his dream. And George is going to go to college.
George is going to go to college first. Then Harry's going to run the building or intern at the building alone or whatever free. And then when George graduates, then Harry's going to go to college.
Right. And then George is going to go off and do his thing.
Right.
And then eventually we assume Harry's going to go off and do his thing. And Dad is running this penny ante, tiny building alone. Yeah. And Dad's a good man, but that's not for George.
Right.
We know that he wants to get out of this town. And there's a great scene with his dad where he sort of like disrespects him and then respects him.
Yeah.
And Dad understands
and
is sympathetic. It's really a nice
It's
scene.
universal, right? It's that thing of like your dad is a hardworking man doing a job, but you as the kid, because you've been raised in a family that you can do whatever you want, you can afford to do whatever you want to a degree, you have different ideas, you have bigger plans for yourself. And this is just universal in all fathers to sons. You want your sons to have a better life than you had, to experience more than you did. Yeah, maybe you're the working stiff, so you want your son to go out and see the world. But this is kind of different because the dad wants him to stay in the town, wants him to kind of establish himself,
this
put
dad
down
is
his roots.
proud of what he's done and believes in what he's doing.
And also thinks George is the right person for this job to take over because he knows Harry ain't the guy. It's George.
And then we go off.
His heroic nature.
Yeah, George ends up going to the dance with Harry.
Yes.
And we have one of just the great, lovely, romantic, funny sequences. And so they're at this dance, and there he sees Mary, who we knew met as a kid.
Yeah.
And it's love at first sight.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it is just beautiful. They can't take their eyes off each other. She's loved him from the beginning, we know.
Which we saw in the scene in the ice cream shop, with her and Violet, who we will talk to, I'm sure, or talk about, I'm sure. But also, there once again, these characters, these young children, establish these characters and these relationships
As
that we
kids.
buy into later as they come up in adults. Yeah.
And then we have this great sequence where they're doing a dance on the gym floor and open up the pool. And that pool still exists.
What?
It's Beverly Hills High School.
Oh, that's great.
It's still there. It still works.
Yeah.
This pool under the gymnasium floor. It's really funny. George and Mary end up falling into the pool.
Yes.
And then we get this lovely, sweet, romantic walk home with George in an oversized football uniform and Mary in a robe being just sexy Donna Reed.
Yeah.
And there's something, I don't know what it is, as wholesome and sweet and also sexy a scene as I can think of.
Yeah.
Sir, by train, please.
A pox upon me for a clumsy lout. Your caboose, me lady.
You may kiss my hand.
Hey. Hey, Mary.
As I was lumbering down the street.
And they're flirting and they're joking and they have this obvious massive connection.
Yeah.
And they're getting close to kissing and then not, and they're getting close to kissing and not. And there's an old guy who says,
Why don't you kiss her instead of talking her to death?
How's that?
Why don't you kiss her instead of talking her to death?
Want me to kiss her, huh?
Oh, youth is wasted on the wrong people.
Hey. Hey, hold on. Hey, mister, come on back out here. I'll show you some kiss that'll put hair back on your head. What do you...
Donna Reed runs away.
Yes.
And Jimmy Stewart is stepping on her robe, and she goes into the bush naked.
Naked.
That's hot.
Yeah.
That is a hot scene.
Yes, and she plays it off really well because of that innocence and that sweetness.
Yep.
It doesn't come off as a... Like, if that was Violet, that'd be a whole nother vibe.
Oh, yeah.
But because it's Mary, it's a whole nother place. And because... Almost Jimmy Stewart plays with it, which is, and it isn't like some people might say nowadays. It's a bit like, oh, it's mess. It's like, it's chauvinistic or misogynistic or what have you. But no, there are these moments that happen between men and women that are sweet and playful. You're not denigrating. You're not insulting her.
Yeah.
You're flirting, and she's walking around. In no way was he going to let her walk out naked. Like,
No,
he
of course
respects
not.
her, he cares
He's
about
just,
her.
He's just
playing
taking a
with the
moment.
Yeah, he's
and he
taking
has
a moment.
this is a very interesting situation.
This is a very interesting situation.
Please give me my robe.
Man doesn't get in a situation like this every day.
I'd like to have my robe.
Not in Bedford Falls, anyway.
Ouch! Oh!
Gesundheit. This
George
requires a
Bailey,
little thought here.
give me my robe.
I've read about things like this, but I never...
Shame on you. I'm going to tell your mother on you.
Well, my mother's way up in the corner there.
I'll call the police.
they're way downtown. They'd be on my side, too.
And then just as she's about to reach her limit and we're at that point where it might get a bit creepy or rapey, the car shows up and his father's had a heart attack. And it's such a great moment because
it's a stroke, but
the stroke. And George Bailey throws the robe to Mary and says, I got to go, because he does respect her. And Mary coming out of the bushes.
And her face.
So powerful, man.
Beautiful.
Yep.
And this is the pattern we're going to see throughout the movie.
Yes.
Is George is about to be happy.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Because George, and this is the thing about him, he is a hero.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't know of other heroes in movies, is that he's the real deal. Like most heroes, like, John McClane, we don't get in those kinds of situations and die. Right. You know what I mean? Like that's not what this is that this is what he wants.
Yeah.
And he's really close to getting it and he's going to make the sacrifice and do what is right.
Yeah.
And what is right is that Potter, who we haven't talked about yet, Lionel Barrymore, in a great villain.
Yeah.
Great evil Scrooge-like, nasty, vicious old man who's only interested in money and doesn't care about humans or it doesn't care about the poor. Is just going to screw everyone he can.
Right.
He's about to take over the savings and loan, and if he takes over the savings and loan, he is going to have more and more power in the town, and the town's going to get worse and worse. And the savings and loan is one of the things, or the building and loan is one of the things keeping people from falling into poverty and despair.
Yeah.
Peter Bailey was not a businessman. That's what killed him. Oh, I don't mean any disrespect to him, God rest his soul. He was a man of high ideals, so-called. But ideals without common sense can ruin this town. Now, you take this loan here to Ernie Bishop. That fellow that sits around all day on his brains in his taxi, I happen to know the bank turned down this loan, but he comes here, and we're building him a house worth $5,000. What does that get us? A discontented, lazy rabble instead of a thrifty working class. And all because a few starry-eyed dreamers like Peter Bailey stir 'em up and fill their head with a lot of impossible ideas. Now, I say...
Just a minute. Just a minute. Now, hold on, Mr. Potter. Just a minute. Now, you're right when you say my father was no businessman. I know that. Why he ever started this cheap penny-ante building and loan, I'll never know. But neither you nor anybody else can say anything against his character because his whole life was... Why, in the 25 years since he and Uncle Billy started this thing, he never once thought of himself. Isn't that right, Uncle Billy? He didn't save enough money to send Harry to school, let alone me. But he did help a few people get out of your slums, Mr. Potter. And what's wrong with that? Well, here, you're all businessmen here. Doesn't it make them better citizens? Doesn't it make them better customers? You said that what'd you say just a minute ago? They had to wait and save their money before they even thought of a decent home? Wait for what? Until their children grow up and leave them? Until they're so old and broken down that you know how long it takes a working man to save $5,000? Just remember this, Mr. Potter, that this rabble you're talking about, they do most of the working and paying and living and dying in this community. Well, is it too much to have them work and pay and live and die in a couple of decent rooms and a bath? Anyway, my father didn't think so. People were human beings to him, but to you, a warped, frustrated old man, they're cattle. Well, in my book, he died a much richer man than you'll ever be.
I'm not interested in your book. I'm talking about the building and loan.
I know very well what you're talking about. You're talking about something you can't get your fingers on, and it's galling you. That's what you're talking about, I know.
He just was going there to
say goodbye.
To say goodbye, signs like, you all do what you want, like, and then Barrymore keeps pushing. Potter keeps pushing. Yep. And Potter pushes one comment too many, which causes George to fight back, which is his heroic nature again coming through and saying to him, and to his detriment. This is what's so interesting about his heroic nature. It is to his detriment to his actual desires and needs and wants. It is to his detriment, but he cannot resist it because it is in his nature.
Yep.
And so and I love that there's that moment where he defies Potter.
And we see his growing maturity.
Yeah.
Like he's still a young man,
yeah,
but we see the power and the intelligence and the passion behind it in that speech. And he walks out, and then the people who run the building and loan come out and say, hey, we made a deal. We saved the building and loan, but you have to stay.
And then the music cue. Dun.
Yeah. And it's just, and you see his face fall. Mm-hmm. But he also, he's going to do the right thing because that is what George Bailey does.
Right.
He's going to do the right thing.
And then we go back to the angels, or we go back to heaven, where he's like, George Bailey stayed, didn't he? He's like, yeah, he stayed and ran the thing. And Harry went off to college and blah, blah, blah. And so we get that constantly, this idea that he's doing all the right things and it is what's building to what happens to him later, the breakdown that happens later. We get a great slow build throughout the whole film in these amazing scenes.
Well, and so it ends up that Harry goes to college, not George.
Right.
And that George stays, and now Harry's coming back from college, and it's great because George is finally going to get to go and travel and go to engineer and do all these things. And
right, because we had that setup, which we haven't talked about, Uncle Billy talking to George there at the train, and he says, what are the three... You know what the three greatest sounds are? And he goes, yes, breakfast is ready, lunch is ready, dinner's ready. No, it's train whistles, ship horns, right, or whatever, and a plane sounds or something like that. And so it's like that idea of travel. For him, is a big deal to travel.
And Harry gets off the train, and this woman gets off the train with him, who's beautifully and lovely and sweet. And this is his wife, because he got married. And she mentions that her dad, who's probably pretty successful, has offered Harry a job, and Harry's so great, and you watch Jimmy Stewart's face fall.
Yeah.
And the happy crowd walks away, and he's left alone. And it is crushing, absolutely crushing.
And Harry's kind of a jerk for doing what he did. I mean, Harry is kind of a jerk. Like he could have sent the letters back going, hey, I met this girl. Hey, I think I might take this job. Hey, I might do this. But because he's one of these guys that he'd rather get forgiven than get permission, he kind of screws George a little bit. But George has to do it.
He does what a lot of people do, which is like, he says, I don't have to take the job. I won't do it if you want. But what that is I'm going to put it on you.
You're right.
Knowing the decision George is probably going to make.
Because he lingers. He goes, but I would like to talk to you. When he says, but I would like to, that's the moment where you know Harry doesn't actually mean what he's saying about not taking the job.
Yeah. And then George goes and talks to the wife and asks, like, how is this really good? And you could see when she's saying, no, it's really a good thing. And you know George has already made this decision.
Yeah.
And then he is depressed. I mean, really down.
Yeah.
Whole party's going on around him. He goes off on a walk. His mom is pushing him towards Mary. Go see Mary. Go see Mary. Go see Mary. And he doesn't do it. And he goes to town, and we run into Violet, who is this sort of flirty, bossy girl with
Gloria Graham.
She's a dangerous woman.
She's a beautiful woman.
She's beautiful.
Yeah, that's my problem in life. I like those women a lot more than the regular, relaxed, safe women. Those women excite me so much.
You like Violets more than Mary's?
Oh yeah, it's a sad. I want to have a Mary, but the Violets they get to me sometimes.
Yeah. And there's this great moment where there are all these guys after her, and then she sees George Bailey, who she's in love with, obviously. Yeah. She goes, well, I'd rather go spend time with you. And he says, do you? And then she says, yeah. And he says, let's go crazy tonight. She goes, great. And then he goes, let's go out into the woods and take off our shoes and walk through that. And watching her face, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, right.
Like, and then he's just crazy.
Yeah, because her version of crazy is not his version of crazy, right?
And then George leaves her and ends up back and walks by Mary's house and goes into Mary's house, and we have what is one of my favorite scenes of all time.
Yeah,
this scene is George is angry and depressed and hates his life. And this is the darkness of the film, is that he does the heroic thing, but he's not happy.
No, because he feels trapped.
Yeah.
That he has to do it because it's in his nature to do it, and no one seems to understand.
No.
And even when he has that interaction with Mary, he begrudgingly, like, he loves her. He knows he loves her.
But she's part of the trap.
Right. That's what I'm saying. He's almost angry at her when he has that scene because he knows if he marries her, he has to stay in this freaking town and build his life. And damn it, why did it have to be her?
Well, and something we maybe should have talked about is there was a weird way in which Mary, in fact, did trap him. And
with the Buffalo Girls and all
not
of that.
Just that is that they go to this old house.
Yes,
and you can throw a rock at this old house and make a wish. And George throws a rock and makes a wish, and he says, I want to travel.
Yeah.
And then she throws a rock, breaks a piece of glass, and makes a wish. And George says, what did you wish for? And we know what she wished for.
Right.
She wished that George is going to stay right here and be her husband.
Yep.
And if we believe in magical things, and this movie does believe in magical things, she cursed him.
Yeah, well, I guess
I'm just saying.
But in a bad way.
No, she loves him.
Yeah, and she's great to him, and she's a good wife.
And she's so excited when he comes in the house because she loves him, and she's essentially saying, I love you.
Yeah.
She's playing the song from that Buffalo Girls. She has George Lasso's The Moon.
Yeah.
She has all these things, and George is having none of it, and he's being mean and nasty.
You know, I didn't come here to...
What did you come here for then?
I don't know. You tell me. You're supposed to be the one that has all the answers. You tell me.
Why don't you go home?
That's where I'm going. I don't know why I came here in the first place. Good night.
Good night.
And then they get the call from Sam Wainwright. And Sam Wainwright is their rich friend who is... We believe, or George believes, is in love with Mary.
Yeah.
Sam's got a girl on the side, by the way. But
of course, always.
And he's offering this big deal. And one of the interesting things, Jimmy Stewart was really nervous about playing this scene. He hadn't done, or he'd been at war, and this is going to be his first kiss, his first romantic scene, and he was really nervous about it. And went to Capra's like, I don't know if I can do this. And what Capra did, originally they were on 2 different phones. And Capra put them on one phone, so they'd be in this one shot. So they're listening to, and it is amazing. They're listening to Sam Wainwright talk, and they're just start looking at each other, and there's this intensity and this sexuality, I think, in this scene. The chemistry between them is off the charts. And then he drops the phone, and he grabs her, and he yells at her.
Mary?
Well, I'm here.
Will you tell that guy I'm giving him the chance of a lifetime? Do you hear? The chance of a lifetime.
He says it's the chance of a lifetime.
Now, you listen to me. I don't want any plastics, I don't want any ground floors, and I don't want to get married ever to anyone. You understand that? I want to do what I want to do. And you're...
George.
Mary.
It's like, I'm not going to do this. I don't want, no one's going to tell me what to do, and I'm not going to be stuck here, and I'm going to live my life, and I'm never going to get married, and I'm never going to get married.
Right.
And it is intense. And then they kiss.
Yeah.
And apparently they drop like a page of dialogue.
Good, because it works.
And the script supervisor came up and said, well, you got to do it again. You got a page of dialogue. And Capra's like, no.
Now we're good.
We're good.
Yeah, and it's such a great moment because she understands now the power of him, right? He's always been kind of unattainable to her in certain ways.
I think she already understood.
Well,
I don't think she's surprised. I think she understands.
Okay, because the way he comes in, like he's like really angry, and then she pushes back against him.
Oh yeah,
and shatters the record, and then he comes back. I forgot my hat, and there's the whole thing, and you get that whole back and forth. But she's not.
He also had a hat problem in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
That's true, but she's not like, she doesn't give in. You know, she fight, and so when that moment happens on the phone, it's both of them understanding the power of what they have, and I think for her understanding for the first time the power of this attraction.
Oh yeah,
it was innocent and fun and playful, and yes, I want him to be my husband, but now she understands there's a darkness to him in that moment, and and I think for the first time she sees it and understands,
and that marriage is not a game.
Yeah.
This is not a sweet romantic thing. This is like you're signing up for something heavy.
Yeah,
and because it's not just because she could marry Sam Wainwright,
right,
be rich,
right.
And she's signing up to live with George Bailey and always be poor and always be making sacrifices and that is what she wants.
Right.
That's what because Mary's a hero too.
Yeah, Mary's very much a hero in the film. Yeah.
Yeah. So they get married.
Yeah.
And again, we have the same moment, which is we're going to go on our honeymoon and it's going to be great and we're going to travel and it's going to be awesome and there's a run on the bank.
Yes, a run on the bank.
And
which I think is staged by Potter because he knows George is getting married and knows George is about to go on a honeymoon, and he sets this whole thing up.
Well, and that's when he takes over the bank.
Exactly, and I think he does it on purpose because he knows George is going to be distracted. He's not going to be in town. He's not going to be there, and only because it's raining does stuff happen in a slower type of time frame than Potter might have anticipated. And so all these things conspire, and then George and Donna, to her credit, Mary says, "Let's go. Let's get out of here." But George can't stop himself. He cannot stop himself because he sees these are his people, he cares about, and his desperation. And they both run back to this building alone with their dowry, in essence, their money they were going to use to go travel, and give people from the town money to tie them over.
We don't know that's what's going to. I mean, like he goes back.
Right. We don't know what he's going to do.
Again, George Bailey being a hero.
Yeah.
Like literally, this is not only will this be destroy the building alone, but the people running on the bank, who are his neighbors, who he cares about. If he gives them what they want, they destroy the bank and destroy the building and loan and destroy themselves.
Yes.
And so he has to convince them, no. And there's this amazing, like, please just take away. We're all in this together.
Right.
And we're all in this together is core Capra belief, is that we have to work together. That's how we're going to survive.
Now listen to me. I beg of you not to do this thing. If Potter gets a hold of this building and alone, there'll never be another decent house built in this town. He's already got charge of the bank, he's got the bus line, he got the department stores, and now he's after us. Why? Well, it's very simple, because we're cutting in on his business, that's why. And because he wants to keep you living in his slums and paying the kind of rent he decides. Joe, you had one of those Potter houses, didn't you? Well, have you forgotten? Have you forgotten what he charged you for that broken-down shack? Here, Ed, you remember last year when things weren't going so well and you couldn't make your payments? Well, you didn't lose your house, did you? You think Potter would have let you keep it? Can't you understand what's happening here? Don't you see what's happening? Potter isn't selling, Potter's buying. And why? Because we're panicky and he's not. That's why. He's picking up some bargain. Now, we can get through this thing all right. We've got to stick together, though. We've got to have faith in each other.
But my husband hasn't worked in over a year, and I need money.
How am I going to live until the bank opens?
I got doctor bills to pay. I need cash.
I can't keep my kids on faith. I've got to have...
How much do you need?
And Mary comes in and says, I got $2,000.
Yeah.
Which is their honeymoon money. And that's where she's a hero.
Yep.
And so all the people start saying, well, I need $100 for this. I need $50 for this. And then this woman comes up, and Frank Capra said, just improvise whatever you want.
All right, Miss Davis.
Could I have $17.50?
That's your heart. Of course you can have it. You got 50 cents.
That's an improv.
Wow.
Jimmy Stewart didn't know she was going to say it, and Jimmy Stewart kissing her, also an improv. And it's a lovely, lovely moment in the scene.
That's great.
And then Jimmy Stewart makes it through the day, and he's almost forgotten that he's gotten married.
Right.
And then Mrs. Bailey wants you to come home.
Yeah.
And they take him home, and home is this old house that she loved that they broke the windows in.
Right.
Boy, that's a lovely scene.
And you have Bert and Ernie, which we haven't touched on, which are the impetus for Bert and Ernie on Sesame Street.
Yes.
The cop, Bert the cop, and Ernie the taxi driver, and they and it's pouring rain, and they help to create a honeymoon suite in essence in this dilapidated house, which they had thrown rocks at when they had first met at the pool as teenagers. And it's a great callback to this idea that they're going to be together, and everything's makeshift. Everything is makeshift, but that's how it is when you're starting out sometimes in a marriage, a new marriage.
And you know this is Mary's idea.
Yeah, of course it is, from top to bottom.
She's a hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, this gets me. I get misty just talking about this movie.
I'm holding on to it as hard as I can. I love this film so much.
Yeah.
I can get emotional 30 times by now.
I mean, by the way, there's a little gag in that scene that I just love, which is Ernie is being the butler, and he tips his hat by leaning back against the wall, and it forces his hat up, and Jimmy Stewart kind of looks down, and water pours off his hat. Yeah. And this goes back to Capra being a gag man, like
as
really
as a tip. Yeah,
it's so funny.
Yeah.
And they've turned it's travel oriented. There are these travel posters, and there's even this. Here's the bed,
Right.
It's like this is a really. In this horrible situation, an unbelievably romantic honeymoon.
Yeah.
And then we get to see, as we go forward in his life, how George Bailey is changing the town.
Yeah.
They're making this, it used to be Potter's Field Cemetery.
Yeah.
And now it's become this housing development for low-income people, and people can own their own homes. He helps Martini, who's the guy who ends up owning the bar, to own his own home. And you see that, and George and Mary are starting to have kids, and we see the family they're building and the friends they're building.
But what's so great about this film is the darkness is always lurking behind the corner. When Sam Wainwright shows up and he's like, "Oh, you should have come into like plastics, like I told you, ground floor and blah blah blah. You'd have made so much money." And then there's when Sam leaves in the car with his mall or whatever you want to say, that woman he's with there's this just quiet, no talking to each other, walk to the car, a resignation of the life they could have had versus the life that they have now. And it's so
And there's no question.
dark.
There's no question in the movie that George Bailey is the smartest guy in the film.
Yeah, sure.
And talented and hardworking. And Sam Wainwright knows that.
Yeah.
Sam Wainwright, I don't think, is throwing him a bone. I think Sam Wainwright is saying, I think George Bailey would be a huge success anywhere he went.
Yes.
And he knows it, and we all know that. And it's not easy to go back to get in your shitty car and go back to, you know.
Because later when Potter had offered him the possibility of becoming a partner with him and becoming combining forces, and he says,
How about the building and loan?
Oh, confound it, man. Are you afraid of success? I'm offering you a 3 years contract at $20,000 a year starting today. Is it a deal or isn't it?
Well, Mr. Potter, I know I ought to jump at the chance, but I wonder if it would be possible for you to give me 24 hours to think it over.
Sure. You go on home and talk about it to your wife.
I'd like to do that.
Yeah, then in the meantime, I'll draw up the papers.
All right, sir.
Okay, George?
Okay, Mr. Potter.
Yeah, he really gets. There's a moment where he gets seduced by the product, by the dark side.
He's Jesus with the devil. That's the devil tempting in the garden about you don't have to, or tempting him. You don't have to die. You don't have to be crucified. You could have this whole other life if you wanted to. But he doesn't give in to it.
I don't need 24 hours. I don't have to talk to anybody. I know right now, and the answer's no. Doggone it. You sit around here and you spin your little webs and you think the whole world revolves around you and your money. Well, it doesn't, Mr. Potter. In the whole vast configuration of things, I'd say you were nothing but a scurvy little spider.
And it was because he almost broke and gave in to him because Sam Wainwright had just visited and he thought about the money they could have been making.
Well, and by the way, something I always think about, because Potter's Field is where the name of the cemetery, and Potter's Field is what has been built over to be these houses. And in one of the books of the Bible, Potter's Field is where Judas is buried.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, so I always think there's definitely a Jesus element in this.
Yeah.
Because he's certainly tempted in that moment. We got to talk, I think we've almost made it now to when things get really, really wrong. And we got to talk about Uncle Billy.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, the actor we might have talked about most, which is Uncle Billy.
Yeah.
This is Thomas Mitchell. We talked about him first in High Noon.
Yes.
We talked about him second in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where he's great.
He is.
And now he plays a third part. And all these guys are really different for kind of a quirky character actor. And he's not a terrible person, but he's a terrible drunk, and he messes a lot of stuff up.
Well, this is where I have my personal thing is interesting because it comes in as like, I don't always think family over friends. I don't always feel that way. You don't have to be a slave to family. It's my belief and my particular belief. Like Uncle Billy is an idiot, but so. Or
a sad sick man.
Sure, okay, sure, fine. But either way, you should not be employed at your building and loan.
Yeah.
That's my point. And his cockiness gets them into trouble because of his misguided attempts, because he's not that smart, to put it in the face of Potter, who is smart at making money at least.
Yeah.
It's no secret to make a lot of money if all you want to do is to make a lot of money.
It's one of my favorite lines while playing.
Yes, but like...
So for those of you listening to Cine-Files, you can figure out what that line's from.
That's right.
Little trivia question.
But this whole scene, like, you don't always have to be tied to family, but it's perfect because it leads to the tragedy of the film. Billy losing that $8,000, and all of that happened because it's wrapped up in a newspaper and all this jazz. Because he's an idiot. And
he is. He screws up so much. And what we know in the alternate timeline where George didn't exist, he's an insane asylum.
Yes, that's right.
Is that the only thing that's keeping him is that the charity and the compassion of this good man, George Bailey, is what's keeping him around. And maybe this is where maybe he's too compassionate.
Well, once again, this is his heroic nature, right?
Yeah.
He would not do it. I would have cut that guy off a long time ago. No offense to him. I would have cut him off. Been like, the greater good is served by you not being in employment at this job.
So as you said, Uncle Billy loses $8,000. Not loses it, but because Potter takes it.
Potter steals it.
He steals it.
It's in essence a felony almost. It's in $10,000 a felony.
He didn't take it on purpose, but he could have given it back.
He could have given it back, and that's stealing.
And the bank examiner is here to check the books, and George Bailey's going to go to jail.
Yep.
And everything that he has spent his life building is all going to be gone.
Yeah.
The building and loan's going to be gone. Potter's going to take it over. His family, his house, everything. He's going to be in jail. His life is going to be ruined. And this movie, man, it gets dark.
Yeah.
I mean, really dark.
Yep.
It is brutal what happens because you see every time happiness and we think we're going to go one way. No, George is going to make a sacrifice. Again, you think he's going to go one way. George is going to make a sacrifice. And I think at this moment, the weight of all those sacrifices breaks him.
Yeah.
And he is genuinely scary in this sequence as he desperately tries to go around and fix it. He goes to see Potter and begs Potter.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things, even when he's desperate and he's begging Potter, he still doesn't throw Uncle Billy under the bus.
No, right.
He says, I lost it. And Potter knows that he didn't lose it.
Yeah.
Potter knows. And he goes, you lost it? He's still being heroic, even at his most desperate moment. And Potter says to him, oh, you got this little money on insurance policy.
I have some life insurance. $15,000 policy.
Yes, how much is your equity in it?
$500.
$500. And you asked me to lend you $8,000. Look at you. You used to be so cocky. You were going to go out and conquer the world. You once called me a warped, frustrated old man. What are you but a warped, frustrated young man? Miserable little clerk crawling in here on your hands and knees and begging for help. No securities, no stocks, no bonds, nothing but a miserable little $500 equity in a life insurance policy. You're worth more dead than alive.
It's rough.
Right.
And so now George is falling completely apart, and he goes home.
Yeah.
And George Bailey with his family, and again, this is me with kids now. The scene was always amazing.
Yeah.
And now watching with kids, it's like, man, because you get there as a parent.
I'm sure.
You get there where you're wiped out and you snap at your kids and you feel yourself doing it and you see your kids being upset or crying and it's the pain in it.
Dad, how do you spell hallelujah?
How should I know? What do you think I am, a dictionary? Tommy, stop that. Stop it. Janie, haven't you learned that silly tune yet? You play it over and over again. Now stop it. Stop it.
And this is Jimmy Stewart who played this 22-year-old guy.
Mm-hmm.
And now you see middle-aged Jimmy Stewart and the weight that's on him and the pain that's on him. And he sees himself doing these horrible things and he can't stop himself and he's snapping at everyone. You see Mary's reaction to him and how she's trying to, and she's very strong in that sequence. It is powerful.
Well, there's the unfair nature of it all. And I think that's the subtext going on here is like, I did all the right things.
Yeah.
Why would you, God, let this happen to me? I did all the right things. And now look, here I am. This money is gone. Uncle Billy lost it. Now I'm going to go to jail for something I didn't even do when I was being nice to everyone and trying to save this damn town. And here I am in this position. And this is what sparks him to and then he has the fight on the phone. Like, this is all uncharacteristic of George.
Goes and gets drunk.
He goes and gets drunk at martinis.
Gets punched out by this guy.
Right, by the guy's the teacher's wife. Yeah,
yeah, he's
terrible to her on the phone. Yeah,
horrible.
So that's what you be. That's what I mean. Is like we know from the beginning that George is a heroic character, but he has this darkness to him. He has this anger within him because of the trapped nature of his life, and it comes out really full bore when he finally conceives of the fact that he might be going to jail and he has no other options because he thinks no one will help him because he thinks everyone's poor. He thinks no one wants to step up.
Well, he's been the hero.
Yes,
he's always helped everyone else.
Right.
He doesn't know how to ask for help.
That's right.
Well, and this is the thing about Capra, and we talked about it in Mr. Smith. Is like, yeah, Mr. Smith is an idealized character, but the world of Mr. Smith is corrupt.
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart, George Bailey, he's a hero, but life is hard.
Yeah.
You know, like this movie to me is that there's the great John Lennon line, you know, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Yeah.
And this movie is that.
Yeah.
Is that he's making plans all the time and life never goes the way he wants. And he's always making the right decision. He's always making the sacrifice.
Yeah.
He's always being heroic. And rather than it lifting you up, which that's how we think of heroism, it is beating you down. Yeah. And by this moment, he is a broken man and he is ready to go kill himself. And that is, again, you think this movie is corny and sentimental? You can think that. This movie goes to the suicide.
Yeah.
We're having the most heroic character in the film ready to jump off a bridge, and in comes Clarence, Henry Travers.
Yeah.
It's really great.
So great.
This is guardian angel. And he's charming and funny and sweet. And of course, we know because we met them at the beginning as the stars that this is really an angel.
Right.
And this is a fantasy movie. You know, we go into magical land and we go to see what would the world be like if George Bailey had never been born.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so dark, man. Yeah. And so, but it needs to be, and this is where you have the shades of Christmas Carol. What an angel or a ghost comes to show him what his future could have been like, or what the future of this town could have been like without him. He goes to show him what his effect on the world is, as opposed to in Scrooge, it's showing him what his effect on the world could be.
Right.
This is a reverse in the way he's showing what effect on the world, how the world would be worse without him, and how the his town would be terrible without him. All these people would be so sad. Mr. Gower would be convicted because he killed that child, and you have all this stuff. Martinis, like, is a mean guy,
he doesn't exist.
He doesn't exist. And what's his face? Who owns the bar? Nick is like this rude guy, but who's always played heavies.
Do you know who it is? That's Sheldon Leonard. Okay. Sheldon Leonard, who is the creator of the Brady Bunch.
What?
All these TV shows. Yeah, huge. I Spy. All these TV shows.
Nick?
That's Sheldon Leonard.
How funny.
Big Hollywood television producer
How
after this.
funny. Wow.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, so you have the world, and Mary's an old maid.
Sherwin Schwartz is Brady Bunch. Sheldon Leonard's a bunch of other stuff.
Okay,
He's a big Hollywood producer. Sorry.
We'll cut that out then. But like, Mary's an old maid. His mom is running a boarding house. Billy's in this insane asylum, like you mentioned earlier. All these negative. Potter's Field is now this like barren place. Harry's dead because he didn't pull him out of the water.
And all the people because Harry became a war hero.
That's right.
So all the people he saved, they're dead too.
Yeah.
And Violet has become, she's working at a
basically
dance
a
hall.
prostitute.
It sure seems that way.
Yeah.
And Pottersville, which is no longer Bedford Falls, is a dark, scary place.
Yeah.
And this is like, wow.
Yeah. But we don't see Potter, which is always they see interesting is in this sequence. We never see Potter like sitting on bags of money or something like Scrooge McDuck or something. We never see him. It's just the aspect of Potter is overwhelms everything else, And then we get to that sequence where he has the fight with Billy. Bert and Ernie show up. Even Bert and Ernie are like darker versions.
Yeah, Ernie, his wife is gone.
Yeah,
Bert, and they're pulled guns on him. It gets it's genuinely scary. And it gets to a really desperate, terrifying place.
Mm-hmm.
And George runs back to the bridge, and after this really intense sequence, and man, Jimmy Stewart breaking down the bridge, it's some beautiful acting.
Help me, Clarence! Get me back! Get me back! I don't care what happens to me! Get me back to my wife and kids! Help me, Clarence, please! Please! I want to live again! I want to live again! I want to live again. Please, God, let me live again.
Yeah, I'm with you. It is the vulnerability of him, and it's like
when he says, "I want to live again," it's so incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you see, So this is, by the way, if you're wondering what these pauses are, this is me and John
getting emotional.
It's because you could see his heart, everything in it.
Yep.
It's right there.
Yeah. And he says, I want to, and he's, I always love the image of the fists digging into the eyes for the tears.
Oh, God.
Because he says, I want to live again. Because he is basically putting his knee down, or he's bowing before his Lord, saying, I'm sorry for have doubted you. I'm sorry for having, I'm sorry. And I want to live again. And I understand now. You've shown me what I need to see. And it's so powerful. But you still get resilient Jimmy when Bert shows up. Now, Bert, I'm going to slug you. Because he thinks he's still back in that timeline. Right. And then the
snow
coming,
comes,
right.
And his lip is bleeding.
Yeah. And the exaltation that he has is so amazing. And him running through the town and and it's finally for the first time in his entire life, George Bailey accepts his life.
Bert! What do you know about that? Merry Christmas! Well, Merry Christmas! Merry! Yay!
It's because he knows how important he is.
Yeah.
And because he feels the love. He feels the love the universe is reflecting back to him.
Yeah.
In this profound way. And even if nothing else happened, even if he just went to jail, he's a happy man.
Yeah.
And by the way, they debated the endings. They had other endings that didn't have all the people coming in with the money.
What?
Yep. And I don't remember exactly what they were, but they finally decided that's the right ending. And you get to this moment, which is one of the great. I'm going to try to say this without crying.
Yeah.
When Harry comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still, you can hear it, man. See, this movie's going to mess. So this is an unusual podcast. There's a lot.
We're real people.
I often joke that I don't have a heart or have emotions. There might be in there somewhere.
Right.
When Harry comes in and says,
to my big brother George, the richest man in town.
Yeah. Every time.
Yeah, every time.
Every time.
And what it is, and I know, and I'm gonna save myself by talking about filmmaking.
Yeah.
It's gonna get me back a little bit. Is that this is why reaction shots are where emotions are.
Yeah.
Because it's not the line. The line is great.
Yeah.
It's watching Jimmy Stewart's face fall.
Yeah.
And take that in.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
As he's taking in the love of the town. Do you know what I'm saying? Really seeing how much they love him. Not financially. It's that they all rallied to save him. And this, once again, is what you said earlier, Steve. The idea, the Capra, we are strong. We're
stronger together.
We're stronger together. I'm not trying to make any political statement. That's just what his mantra is throughout all his films, is that we are stronger as a society when we work together. And that, at the end, is all those people coming forward to thank him because they all realized how much George Bailey had affected their. They'd always been appreciative, but they never thought George needed help. They always saw George as a strong guy who could handle whatever came down the pike because he was so giving and loving and caring. And when he has the break, everyone runs and steps forward. I mean, I love the line, even the maid who runs in or their housekeeper who runs in and she's like, I've been saving his money if we ever get a divorce, if I ever get a husband. It's so funny, the guy.
That was really good, by the way.
Well, I love her. It's one of my favorite lines.
Well, and she's great, by the way, as an African-American character. There is nothing, I won't say, she fits into a a role that was frequently played by African American women.
She's a maid, yeah.
But she's
Or a
100% a member of the family. There's
Yeah.
nothing demeaning about her.
Yeah.
She's respected. She's intelligent. She's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, and she loves mom.
She's an equal in the
an
whole.
equal.
Yeah. Because
Absolutely.
like when they're at the wedding, she's like there with Jimmy Stewart's mom. Like it's all there.
And you just get the sense they're best friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I love the kid, the bank examiner ripping up the stuff.
That's great.
And then the principal dropping the watch, and all of that is just symbolic, you know.
So you say you don't want to get political, but I got to get a little political.
Okay,
here.
sure.
Because the other thing that one of the things that changed this movie for me was having kids.
Yeah.
Watching it this time, we've just been through a really tough election.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about values, and I keep thinking about what I believe in. How much George Bailey is so much of my values.
Yeah.
And the argument with Potter, that's the argument we're having today.
Yeah.
You know,
He's in essence Trump. You can't deny that.
I mean, this is a greedy, self-obsessed guy who believes that people who are poor and immigrants are scum, and that any help given towards them is a waste, and that they'll just take advantage. And George Bailey believes that people, when given a chance, can succeed, and that people deserve to have a house and a roof, and they deserve to not have to crawl to the wealthy. And so, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, that's a good point, Steve.
You know, I mean, I don't think we can talk about this movie without talking about, a man who is, you talk about the 1% and the 99%, and George Bailey is a fighter for the 99%.
Absolutely.
That is what he believes in.
And Extension Capra is, too, because that's what he was all about. Mrs. Smith Goes to Washington does that as well, yeah.
And something I learned, I can't believe that this is true, redacted FBI documents from J. Edgar Hoover show that or have statements about this film being a loosely veiled communist, and that it attacks bankers and businessmen, and that it's and you wonder when Capra's career went south. We talked about in Mr. Smith that he was brought before the House not brought before the House on American Activities, but he was investigated, and and here's like this most American of filmmakers, and this movie that has what to me are core American values. Taking care of the other person, working together, helping out the poor. Like these are like what, community and family and honesty and sacrifice, and that's American
And this
values
is during a Democratic administration because Truman's a president at this point in 46. Yeah. So it's just an interesting situation.
Yeah.
And I think I think the next 4 years we're going to have movies like this more. I think we're going to have a callback to movies like this again, and there will be these kind of characterizations. There'll be these kinds of small guy against the big corporation type stuff. I think it's all going to happen, even more so now.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if people start getting investigated all over again. I would not be surprised at all.
And who we need are George Baileys.
Yes.
We need people who believe in community and believe in caring for each other and believe in doing the right thing, and doing the right thing means not necessarily doing the right thing for yourself.
Right.
And this is something else I wanted to talk about, is that this movie is so unique because the classic Hollywood paradigm is the kid who has the dream. And maybe it's that you want to build rockets like in October Sky, or maybe it's that you want to, like Moana that just came out, and you the family says, no, you got to stay here and rule the island, and she goes, no, I have this destiny to go out on the sea. Or it's the Little Mermaid. I mean, all the Disney movies are like this. Is that, or it's the kid who wants to be the artist or the painter or the singer or the writer, or they want to go do something else, and their family saying, no, you have to be in the coal mine. You have to stay at home. You have to be responsible. And the Hollywood message is always follow your dreams. That is always the Hollywood message. And this is a movie where it is turned on its head. Is that he doesn't follow his dreams.
Well, he can't.
He could.
He could. Right.
You look at
it's not in his nature to be able to do it.
I mean, it's not like Poseidon in Little Mermaid doesn't have reasons why she should stay there.
Right.
It's not like the people that are, the family in October Sky needs him to be a coal miner.
Right.
They all have pressures of why they should do this thing, and Hollywood says follow your dreams.
Right.
And I think part of the reason for that is Hollywood is created by people who followed their dreams and succeeded. And the people that followed their dreams and didn't succeed, they don't tell their stories.
Right.
Which is the majority, by the way. In fact, usually following your dream doesn't work out this way.
Right.
And this movie says, no, do the right thing. Don't follow your dreams.
Right.
And that is really profound. And as a guy now who's 48, who expected to be a big time Hollywood director and is now learning to no, I need to take care of my family.
Right.
Be a responsible person. That's more, and finding more joy in those things, to be honest. Is like going, oh, this movie is so much more mature than Hollywood.
Well, this is the point I want to make, Steve, to follow what you're saying here, what you just said. you're finding the joys in this, right? And that's
exactly,
and that's what George Bailey does, which is why he's running through that town and saying hello to everything all over again. Because yes, he had dreams, but his purpose was bigger. His purpose. What would it matter that he spent 6 months traveling the world in exchange for the years he spent saving so many people's lives and making their lives better and making his life better with these great kids and this beautiful wife in this nice town. And he finally embraces it because this is a dream he didn't know he wanted, and now it's come true.
Right.
And he embraces the dream of it all and loves it so much more.
And his life has meaning.
Yes.
Deep, deep meaning.
Right.
That's maybe, and no, it's not the meaning he thought it was going to be.
Right.
You know, it's like there's that great, in a different way, Fight Club deals with this, because that great speech of,
We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't.
And this is sort of another side of that. It's like, was George capable of building great buildings and skyscrapers? Sure. Probably.
Right.
Would that have done as much as he did for Bedford Falls? You know?
Who knows?
And would he have had Mary?
Right.
And his kids?
Right.
And these people that love him?
And how much of a life of quiet desperation would he have led being a slave to people like Potter, who are the ones funding these buildings that he's going to build, right?
Yeah.
And then raising the rates on the buildings that he's going to build and raising the rent and raising all this kind of stuff. Like there's all this indirect stuff that could have occurred. And whereas as ripples in a pond, whereas him staying in the town is ripples in a pond that are positive all around.
Well, and the value of being a good person is maybe more important than the value of being a dream. Yeah.
Right.
You know, whether that's rich or famous or whatever it is.
Sure.
You know, because the only rich guy we see is Potter.
Yeah.
And Sam Wainwright, I guess. But
yeah, we don't know what
we don't know
level of rich
anything
he
about him.
is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, John, final thoughts on It's a Wonderful Life.
I mean, it's such a personal film for me. It's real deep in my heart, and I love it to pieces, and I watch it all the time. It always makes me cry, always makes me get back in touch with the idea of fighting for the little guy and feeling that power, and also about doing the right thing. Like, it's really important. Not doing the right thing for you, doing the right thing, period, which is not always easy. And I think it's so fantastic. It's a nice timepiece of a film of that time in the 40s, but also that echoes, as all great films do, decades later, and still powerful today, even more so now given our current situation, our political climate. And so that's why this movie just keeps coming. People keep coming back, and the Christmas nature of it all. I mean, if you look at it, the gifts only come at the end of the movie, and it's money. There's no like real gifts under the gift is your life, and that's what's powerful. That's what the movie tells you. Your life is the gift, is the most ultimate Christmas gift you can have. Do with it what you need to do to bring joy to other people with your gift.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting thing, is that it's not a Christmas movie because it's about Christmas.
Right.
I mean, yes, the final scene takes place on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And there's a tree, but it's not about, it's a Christmas movie, or, you know, in the sense of what I would call the spirit of Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a Jewish guy who grew up celebrating Christmas,
Right.
but like, is that in the deep sense of what it is to be a good human.
Yeah.
And it isn't being a good human because it's easy.
Right.
It's constantly seen it's hard.
Yeah.
You're going to have some old man hit you in the ear. That's
Yeah.
what it is to be a good human.
Right.
You're going to have to give up your dreams and run the building alone.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. You're going to have to let your brother go live the life that he wants to live with the woman that he loves, and you're not going to get that.
Yeah.
It means that you're going to have to give up your honeymoon. It means that you're not going to have nice things, and it means that you're not going to live up to the potential that you think and build the things that you think you're capable of doing.
Right.
It means you're going to make all those sacrifices, and it also means at the same time you're going to build relationships and family, and you're going to matter in a way that, you know, all of our lives actually matter.
Yeah.
Like the goodness you do to others, the friendships you create, the love you spread, that matters.
Yeah.
And maybe it matters in a way that we can't see all the time, because you know what? Life is pretty hard.
Yeah.
Life hurts a lot.
Yeah.
All the time, you know, and George Bailey hurts a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean he didn't have a wonderful life.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
What a great thing to say.
So, We would love to hear your comments. I hope this movie is as special to you as it obviously is to us.
Yeah.
You can reach us on Facebook. It's at the Cine-Files, Cine-Files. If you want to reach me, you can reach me on Twitter at SRMorris. John, where can they reach you?
Well, you guys can always reach me at The Rocha Says, ROCHA, on Twitter and on Instagram. And I want to say to everyone who's listening to us, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
I hope you're enjoying your time with your family. Maybe you just watched the film again and you're listening to our podcast. Thank you. And hopefully we enriched the film for you even more now before you watched it or after you watched it. And so thank you for taking us along with you if you're listening to us during this holiday time. And, give your family that little extra hug. Yeah, they can be aggravating, but hey, they're family and it matters.
And that's part of your wonderful life.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's it for this week. Please review us on iTunes, and we will see you next week and maybe next year on the Cine-Files.